The studio lights dimmed slightly as Oprah Winfrey took her seat across from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the audience buzzing with anticipation for what promised to be a riveting exchange. Oprah, with her signature poise and piercing gaze, leaned forward, her voice steady yet probing as she began the confrontation. "Jasmine, we've seen you in the headlines time and again, standing up fiercely in Congress, but let's talk about the real issues behind those viral moments. Your clashes with colleagues, your unfiltered responses. Do they serve the people or just the spectacle?" Crockett, dressed in a sharp blazer, smiled confidently, her eyes meeting Oprah's without flinching. "Oprah, I've always believed in speaking truth to power, even when it's uncomfortable. Those moments aren't for show, they're for accountability." But Oprah wasn't letting it slide that easily. She pressed on, pulling up clips from recent committee hearings where Crockett had gone toe-to-toe with opponents. "Again, Jasmine, we've seen this pattern of confrontation after confrontation. Is there a line you won't cross?" The Congresswoman paused, gathering her thoughts, then launched into a passionate defense of her methods, explaining how growing up in a tough environment shaped her resilience. The audience murmured in agreement at points, but Oprah interjected repeatedly, challenging her on specifics like policy impacts on everyday Americans. "What about the families affected by your stances on criminal justice reform? Again, tell me how your words translate to action." Crockett fired back with statistics and personal anecdotes, her voice rising with conviction, turning the interview into a back and forth that felt more like a debate than a chat. Oprah circled back to Crockett's social media presence, questioning if her online barbs were elevating discourse or dragging it down. "We've seen you call out hypocrisy again and again, but does that build bridges or burn them?" The tension built as Crockett defended her digital strategy, emphasizing the need to reach younger voters in their spaces. Oprah nodded thoughtfully but didn't relent, diving into Crockett's personal life via her journey from lawyer to legislator and how it informed her aggressive style. "Jasmine, confronting adversaries is one thing, but confronting your own party's inconsistencies? That's bold. Tell us more." The Congresswoman elaborated on internal Democratic Party dynamics, sharing stories of behind-the-scenes battles that rarely made the news. Oprah, ever the master interviewer, looped back to the core theme, repetition and confrontation. "Again and again, you step into the fray. What drives that relentlessness?" Crockett's response was heartfelt, touching on her commitment to justice and equality, drawing applause from the crowd. Yet Oprah pushed further, exploring the emotional toll of such public skirmishes. "Does it ever wear you down, Jasmine, facing opposition repeatedly?" The dialogue flowed intensely, with Oprah highlighting examples from Crockett's career, from her early days in Texas politics to her national spotlight. The audience hung on every word as the two women sparred intellectually, Oprah's questions sharp and Crockett's answers unyielding. As the segment progressed, Oprah confronted her on economic policies, asking, "How do your confrontations lead to tangible change for working-class families?" Crockett detailed her legislative efforts, countering with questions of her own about media's role in amplifying division. The exchange was electric, a testament to both women's prowess, but Oprah kept returning to the motif of persistence. "Again, Jasmine, we've circled these. What's the endgame?" Crockett's eyes sparkled as she articulated her vision for a more equitable America, refusing to back down. The conversation delved into cultural issues, with Oprah probing Crockett's views on race and representation in politics. "You've confronted systemic biases head-on, but again, how do we move beyond words?" Crockett shared initiatives she's championed, her passion evident. Oprah, sensing the depth, allowed moments of vulnerability, asking about personal sacrifices. The back-and-forth continued, building layers upon layers of discourse, until the first break loomed, but not before Oprah landed another pointed query on foreign policy alignments. Resuming after the commercial, Oprah dove right back in, her tone unwavering as she confronted Jasmine Crockett on her handling of bipartisan efforts or lack thereof. "Jasmine, in a divided Congress, confrontation seems to be your default. Again, why not more collaboration?" Crockett leaned back slightly, composing her rebuttal with care, explaining that true progress often requires calling out obstructions first. "Oprah, I've reached across the aisle when possible, but I won't compromise on core values." The audience nodded along, but Oprah pressed, citing specific bills where Crockett's vocal opposition had stalled proceedings. "We've seen this pattern repeat, a confrontation halting momentum. Is that strategic?" Crockett countered with examples of successful amendments born from her persistence, her voice steady and articulate. Oprah shifted gears to Crockett's public image, questioning if her fiery persona overshadowed her policy expertise. "Again and again, the media focuses on your clapbacks rather than your contributions. Does that frustrate you?" The Congresswoman admitted to moments of exasperation but emphasized controlling her narrative through direct engagement. The dialogue intensified as Oprah brought up Crockett's interactions with conservative figures, replaying a heated exchange from a recent hearing. Jasmine, confronting them directly like that, does it change minds or entrench positions? Crockett's response was nuanced, discussing the importance of visibility and challenging misinformation. Oprah nodded but looped back, confronting her on the risks of alienating moderate voters. In swing districts, repeated confrontations could cost seats. How do you balance that? Crockett detailed her grassroots approach, sharing stories from constituents who appreciated her candor. The conversation expanded to broader societal issues, with Oprah probing Crockett's stance on education reform. "You've confronted failing systems again and again. What's your blueprint for success?" Crockett outlined comprehensive plans, incorporating community input and innovative funding. Oprah interjected with counterpoints from experts, keeping the pressure on. As the exchange unfolded, Oprah delved into Crockett's mentorship role for young politicians, asking how she advises them on confrontation versus diplomacy. "Jasmine, do you encourage this again and again approach?" Crockett smiled, recounting guidance sessions where she stresses authenticity above all. The audience erupted in applause at her anecdotes, but Oprah swiftly returned to policy, confronting her on healthcare disparities. "We've circled health equity multiple times again. What concrete steps?" Crockett provided detailed legislative proposals, her enthusiasm infectious. Oprah, maintaining control, explored the intersection of politics and personal faith, questioning how Crockett's beliefs fuel her confrontational style. "Does faith guide your repeated stands?" The Congresswoman opened up about spiritual influences, adding depth to the discussion. Tension mounted as Oprah confronted her on environmental policies, citing criticisms from activists. "Jasmine, confronting polluters is vital, but again, where's the follow-through?" Crockett defended her record with data on sponsored bills, countering effectively. The back-and-forth covered immigration next, with Oprah pushing on border security versus humanitarian concerns. Repeated confrontations on this issue, do they yield results? Crockett articulated a balanced view, drawing from her legal background. Oprah's questions grew more pointed, looping to economic inequality. "Again and again, you've called out wealth gaps as solutions." Crockett's answers were thorough, emphasizing progressive taxation and job creation. As the segment wore on, Oprah touched on Crockett's family life, confronting the balance between public service and personal well-being. "How do you sustain this relentless energy?" The Congresswoman shared coping strategies, humanizing the exchange. The audience remained captivated, the dialogue a masterclass in intellectual sparring, with Oprah's persistent probing met by Crockett's resilient responses. With the energy in the room palpable, Oprah escalated the confrontation, focusing on Jasmine Crockett's role in social justice movements. "Jasmine, you've confronted law enforcement practices again and again. Has it led to reform?" Crockett, undeterred, recounted her advocacy for police accountability bills, her voice laced with determination. Oprah, change doesn't come without pushback. I've seen incremental wins, but Oprah countered with statistics on stalled legislation, pressing for more. Again, what about the communities still waiting? The Congresswoman elaborated on coalition-building efforts, highlighting partnerships with activists. Shifting to women's rights, Oprah confronted her on reproductive freedoms. "In this post-Roe era, your confrontations are bold, but repeated effective." Crockett's response was fervent, detailing her fights against restrictive laws. The audience cheered, but Oprah delved deeper, questioning alliances with progressive groups. "Jasmine, aligning with radicals again and again, does it alienate centrists?" Crockett defended strategic partnerships, emphasizing shared goals. Oprah looped to voting rights, confronting her on suppression tactics. You've called them out repeatedly as strategies to combat. Crockett outlined voter mobilization initiatives, her passion evident. The conversation turned to mental health, with Oprah probing Crockett's personal advocacy. Confronting stigma is key, but again, policy implementation. The Congresswoman shared bills she's co-sponsored, adding emotional weight. Oprah, sensing vulnerability, explored Crockett's experiences with discrimination. As a black woman in politics, confrontations are daily. How do you cope? Crockett's anecdotes were powerful, resonating deeply. Undaunted, Oprah shifted to tech regulation, confronting her on big tech's influence. Repeated calls for oversight. What's next? Crockett proposed antitrust measures, countering adeptly. The exchange covered foreign aid, with Oprah questioning priorities. Jasmine, confronting global inequities. Again, a U.S. role. Crockett articulated a humanitarian approach, backed by examples. Oprah pressed on defense spending, looping back to domestic needs. Again, balance military and social programs. Crockett's answers were balanced, showcasing expertise. As dialogue flowed, Oprah confronted her on climate change denial. You've taken on deniers repeatedly. Impact? Crockett highlighted scientific consensus, urging action. The audience engaged, with Oprah facilitating questions from viewers. One queried Crockett's media strategy. She responded thoughtfully. Oprah interjected, confronting on misinformation. Jasmine, in this era of fake news, your confrontations cut through. Crockett emphasized fact-checking, her resolve firm. Topics ranged to education equity, with Oprah pushing on funding disparities. Again and again, promises unfulfilled. Your plan? Crockett detailed reform agendas, inspiring hope. Oprah explored Crockett's literary influences, tying to her rhetorical style, books that shaped her confrontational voice. The Congresswoman cited key works, adding layers. Tension built as Oprah confronted on party loyalty. Jasmine, challenging your own side repeatedly. A risky? Crockett affirmed independence, earning respect. The segment delved into cultural representation, with Oprah questioning media portrayals. As a trailblazer, confrontations redefine narratives. Crockett agreed, sharing milestones. Oprah's probing continued, covering economic recovery post-pandemic. Repeated calls for stimulus. Lessons learned? Crockett reflected wisely, proposing future safeguards. The back and forth was exhaustive yet exhilarating, with Oprah's relentless again and again motif underscoring Crockett's tenacity. As the show neared its midpoint, Oprah intensified her line of questioning, confronting Jasmine Crockett on her views regarding gun control. Jasmine, you've confronted the NRA and gun lobbyists again and again. Has it moved the needle? Crockett, with a steely gaze, detailed her push for background checks and assault weapon bans, citing tragic events that fueled her fire. Oprah, every confrontation is for the lives lost. We can't stop now. But Oprah challenged her on bipartisan resistance, asking for alternative strategies. Again, what if gridlock persists? Crockett outlined community-based prevention programs, her voice resolute. Transitioning to criminal justice, Oprah pressed on mass incarceration. Your repeated confrontations with the systemic reform roadmap. The Congresswoman elaborated on sentencing reforms, drawing from her prosecutorial past. The audience listened intently as Oprah looped to youth empowerment. Jasmine, confronting generational cyclesa initiatives. Crockett shared mentorship programs she's supported, inspiring applause. Oprah delved into economic empowerment for minorities, questioning barriers. Again and again, systemic hurdles. Dismantling. How? Crockett proposed targeted investments, her expertise shining. The dialogue expanded to healthcare access, with Oprah confronting disparities. Repeated advocacy for universal coverage. Progress? Crockett highlighted expansions under recent laws, countering criticisms. Oprah shifted to environmental justice, probing polluted communities. Jasmine, confronting corporate polluters. Accountability measures. Crockett advocated for stricter regulations, passionate about equity. As tensions simmered, Oprah explored Crockett's international perspectives on global human rights. Your confrontations echo a U.S. influence. The Congresswoman discussed diplomatic engagements, balanced and informed. Oprah pressed on trade policies, Looping back to domestic jobs, again, fair trade versus protectionism, Crockett's responses were nuanced, addressing worker rights. The exchange covered digital privacy, with Oprah questioning surveillance. Repeated calls for a protection to legislative wins. Crockett detailed bills in progress, emphasizing urgency. Audience interaction heightened, with Oprah relaying a question on social media regulation. Jasmine, confronting tech giants on antitrust actions. Crockett affirmed support, citing monopolistic harms. Oprah confronted her on personal branding. Your confrontational style builds a brand, but again, authenticity check. Crockett laughed lightly, affirming genuineness. Topics turned to arts funding, with Oprah probing cultural investments, confronting cuts to creativity priorities. Crockett championed arts education, tying to societal benefits. Oprah delved into veteran affairs, questioning support systems. Repeated pledges to veterans of fulfillment. Crockett shared advocacy stories, heartfelt. The back and forth included space exploration, surprisingly, with Oprah asking about inclusivity. Jasmine, confronting barriers in STEM diversity push. Crockett endorsed programs for underrepresented groups. Oprah looped to fiscal responsibility, confronting debt ceilings. Again and again, partisan battle as solutions. Crockett proposed balanced budgets, pragmatic. As the segment evolved, Oprah touched on animal welfare, lightly confronting factory farming. Your views on ethical treatment? Crockett supported humane reforms. The dialogue was comprehensive, showcasing both women's depth, with Oprah's persistent probing met by Crockett's unwavering stance. Entering the latter part of the show, Oprah ramped up the intensity, confronting Jasmine Crockett on her positions regarding immigration reform. Jasmine, you've confronted anti-immigrant rhetoric again and again. What's your comprehensive plan? Crockett, composed yet fervent, outlined pathways to citizenship and border security measures that prioritized humanity. Oprah, confrontation is necessary to humanize the debate. Families are at stake. Oprah countered with concerns over enforcement, pressing for details. Again, balancing compassion and law. Crockett elaborated on asylum processes, her legal acumen evident. Shifting to labor rights, Oprah questioned worker protections, repeated advocacy for unions' impact on economy. The Congresswoman defended collective bargaining, citing productivity gains. The audience engaged as Oprah delved into housing affordability, confronting skyrocketing rent policies. Crockett proposed subsidies and zoning reforms, addressing urban challenges. Oprah looped to education debt, confronting student loans. Jasmine, again and again, calls for forgiveness is sustainability. Crockett argued for relief tied to income, equitable. The conversation turned to cybersecurity, with Oprah probing threats. Your confrontations with hackers and national strategy. Crockett emphasized investments in defenses, forward-thinking. Oprah explored cultural heritage preservation, questioning funding. Repeated efforts to protect Historia. Why vital? Crockett tied it to identity and education, passionate. As dialogue deepened, Oprah confronted on pandemic preparedness, lessons from COVID. Repeated warnings ignored. Crockett advocated for robust public health systems, reflective. Oprah pressed on energy transitions, looping to renewables, confronting fossil fuels. Again a timeline. Crockett supported green jobs, optimistic. Topics included disability rights, with Oprah questioning accessibility. Jasmine, your advocacy legislative pushes. Crockett detailed data enhancements, inclusive. The exchange covered indigenous issues, confronting historical injustices. Repeated calls for sovereignty actions. Crockett endorsed land returns, respectful. Oprah shifted to sports equity, lightly probing gender pay, confronting disparities in athletics. Crockett championed equality, energetic. Audience questions flowed. One on media literacy. Crockett responded adeptly. Oprah confronted on aging populations, questioning elder care. Again and again, system failures reforms. Crockett proposed expansions, compassionate. The back and forth included space policy, with Oprah asking about commercialization,